Hi there, everybody. My name is Tom Evans. I work in Edinburgh Napier's Keep on Track service, and I'm here today with my colleague Caroline Fraser. Caroline, do you want to tell us a little bit about the service?
Yeah, hi everybody, I'm Caroline Fraser. I run the Keep on Track service with Tom, and we run, as Tom has said, the Keep on Track service. We're part of the Wellbeing and Inclusion team, and we support you, our students who are struggling to stay on track with their studies, possibly due to challenges outside of uni, and we can also support students who are thinking about leaving and explore their options.
Fantastic, thank you. So we're here today to talk a little bit about the upcoming exams and how best to kind of prepare yourself for that, how best to deal with the exams while you're sitting them as well. We are very, very lucky today to be joined by some of our colleagues from different departments in the university who will introduce in a second. I'd just like to kind of say to everybody as well that this is going out live, so if you have any questions, do feel free to put them in the comments, and if we have time, we will try and answer as many as we can. We may not get around to answering all of them or many of them at all, but we will respond to any comments you put in, and we will get back to you even if we don't manage to answer it during the course of this session. So with kind of no further ado, I would like to introduce our guests now. We are very lucky today to have with us from Academic Skills our colleague Mel Kinchant, and from our Counselling and Mental Wellbeing team we have Nikki Aru. So hello, both of you. Nice to see you.
Hey, how you doing?
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Caroline. Hi,
Hi
Nikki.
there, guys.
Hiya.
So we are going to jump kind of straight into it, if that's okay with everybody. So first of all, I've got a question for you, Mel, kind of from the academic skills side of things. And it's something we kind of hear quite a lot from our students, which is, you know, obviously there is so much to hold in your head for exams, and what are the most efficient ways really to revise to make sure that you're really kind of retaining that information?
Okay, thanks, Tom. And that is indeed a good question. A question I get asked a lot from students individually or students in groups. I've been doing a lot of exam prep workshops in the last couple of weeks, and that question comes up a lot. And a lot of the time students are saying they feel really overwhelmed because it feels like there's so much to learn and it's not sticking. And I think really we have to, the key thing is that it's an individual thing. So it always will come down to what works for you, but we can draw from, I suppose, the research and evidence based around effective learning and how we learn more effectively. And there was a sort of body of research that was actually done in the late 90s, probably way before a lot of our students were actually born. And a gentleman called Tony Bazan, 1999, he did a lot of research around learning and how we learn best. And he did a lot around what we call active learning. And active learning is, I suppose, it's active learning as opposed to passive learning. And active learning is really about engaging with information, and we know that that helps it stick. And without active learning, some of the research that Tony did, he sort of discovered that we forget up to 98% of information if we're not active in our learning in only 3 weeks. Okay, so if that doesn't give buy-in to active learning, I don't know what will. And active learning really is moving on from just reading content. That would be quite passive. Okay, so we can look at content, we can look at lecture notes, we can look at reading list articles and things like that. We can look at PowerPoint slides, and we can actually feel as if we really understand the content. Okay, because what we're doing there is we're breeding familiarity. We're not actually testing our learning. So we have to move on from just reading information and going over and over our notes and rewriting our notes. And we have to actually really try and engage with it. And the sorts of things that we could do is we could write flashcards, we could do mnemonics, we could do flowcharts. It depends on what you're studying. And also our brains really like novelty and variety. Okay, so try to mix it up, try to do different ways of trying to capture the key information that you need for your exam. One way that you might try, for example, is recording yourself, and that's a different way of the information going in. So you record some key content, and when you're going for a walk, taking a break or something, then you're listening to that content and it's going in as well. Okay, so a big thing there is being active in your learning, finding out what works best for you. If you've got a tried and tested method that you've used before, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. Okay, so now is not the time to totally change your strategy, but you might change in slightly different areas. So active learning, novelty and mixing it up. The key thing with exams is quite often students spend an awful lot of time revising content. Okay, and what we have to remember is that last bit before the exam, we have to practice what we're actually going to be tested on in the exam. So you can have a really good knowledge and understanding of content in relation to your module, and then actually not do particularly well in the actual exam because you haven't familiarized yourself with the types of questions, you haven't maybe thought about your time management during the actual exam. So I can't stress this enough. Get your hands on some past papers or some past example questions. Ask your academic staff if they've not made them available to you. I mean, academic staff usually help really prepare students before a particular exam, but if you don't know where any are and you haven't be given any, then ask for those and practice those questions that you're going to be asked and time yourself doing that. Okay, the more you can do that, the better your exam technique on the day. Okay, so we have to definitely practice the thing that we're going to be tested on in the exam. That's just a whistle-stop tour.
You covered a lot there, Mel. Thank you very much. That's a really helpful answer to our first question, I think. Something else I think that we hear a lot of, certainly in Keep on Track, is students coming to us talking about struggling to manage their time and, you know, how do they structure their study, how do they revise, how do they prep. So what do you think as an academic skills advisor are the benefits of time management, and what's the most effective way to organise revision and preparation time?
Okay, thank
Quite
you,
a long
Caroline.
question.
That's quite a long question. I'm thinking, right, I'm in an exam, I need to write down all the parts of the question. But no, definitely time management. And this is something that I have to continue to work on myself anyway. But time management is super important. It's really important because if we don't carve out the time to revise, so we're thinking about our revision and preparation for that exam leading up to the exam date or exams, however many you're doing, then we'll always think that it's going to happen. Okay, and it doesn't happen. So what we have to do is we have to be realistic and maybe sort of plan, say for example next week, and be realistic about all of the essential things that you have to do in your week. Okay, so we know lots of students aren't just studying, they maybe got part-time work and or caring responsibilities, other things that they have to do outside of their studies. So you need to put all of that into your timetable. Now, how you create your timetable is a very individual thing. So whether that's on your phone, or there's lots of online free apps for time management and planning that you can access, or if you're a bit old like me, you might use a calendar or a diary or your Outlook calendar or anything. It doesn't matter how you do it as long as you do it. Put all of the essential things into your planner and then look for the pockets of time that you can devote to revision. Okay. Now, often students will say to me, I've just got so much on in my week, I can't find a big stretch where I can really get into the revision. Well, actually, the evidence around effective learning tells us that phase-spaced small pockets of learning generally are more effective than spending a whole 10 hours a whole day trying to do the stuff. Okay, so if you've got odd little hours here and there, that will soon accumulate in your week. Okay, so schedule that time. And the benefits of time management are it can help to reduce that feeling of overwhelm because you're small chunking that big task of preparing for the exam. It can help retain a sense of control because you feel as if you're working towards that exam as well. If you have pockets of time scheduled in your calendar, diary, planner, whatever you're using as well, that feels manageable for the actual revision itself because there's an end point. So if you say, for example, I'm going to revise between 4 and 6 on a Friday, if you're struggling at 5 o'clock and thinking, oh, this is quite hard, or you can say, well, I just need to keep going for another hour. Okay, so that can help. Small chunk, what can feel like quite a big task. What's really important in time management as well, and I suppose we're just thinking specifically about preparing for exams, is not just putting into your calendar between 4 and 6, I'm going to revise for that module. Okay, because that's not very specific, because then 4 o'clock comes and you spend 20 minutes thinking, well, I don't actually know what I'm going to do in my 2 hours. Put into your planner or diary exactly what you're going to do in that 2 hours. Okay, whether it's I'm going to look over lectures 6 to 8 content, or I'm going to practice however many sample questions, okay, or I'm going to do a timed practice of a particular example question or past paper. So be quite specific about what you're going to do. And I think another key thing with time management is that you have to be sort of firm with yourself, trust yourself, and hold yourself to account. So if you say that you're going to revise between 1 and 3 on Wednesday, you actually need to do that. Unless the sky falls in or you break your leg or something, actually do that. Really trust yourself. And the more you can do that and be disciplined and focused during those revision periods, the better you'll feel and the more in control you'll feel, because you're working towards, you're being proactive in terms of preparing for that exam. One last thing on time management, because I don't want to take up all the time, is I'm a big fan of checklists. Okay, so you've got your planner, you've got your weekly planner, you've got your revision time scheduled for 4 o'clock that day. In the morning or just before 4 o'clock starts, write a little to-do list to be even more specific about the tasks that you want to do in that time. And then as you've done each task, so I've practiced 3 questions and that's on your list, tick it off. Okay, because if we tick things off on a checklist, we have a small, tiny release of dopamine in the brain. That gets released, task completion, and that feels really good, satisfying, but it also acts as a motivator. So you actually want to do the next thing on your list. And again, it helps you retain that sense of control, and it also makes sure that you're covering all of the key content that you need for that particular exam.
Brilliant, thank you. We've spent quite a lot of time already just talking about kind of the preparation for the exams. I think that, sometimes we miss, what about the exam itself? And I was just kind of wondering, how have you got any kind of tips for how to manage the actual exam? Top tips for taking exams, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So I think, obviously it'll be slightly different because some students are doing online exams, and we do have some students who are doing on-campus exams now, and I think that's sort of mainly students that need to do so for professional bodies and accreditation and things like that. So you're obviously, if you're doing an exam on campus, you have probably got even more in terms of a limit on the time that you do respond to that particular exam paper. But regardless of whether you're online or on campus, you are going to have to respond and complete that exam in a specified time frame. Okay, now what's a good idea is think about the number of questions, and if you have, if you want more clarity around what to expect in your exam, then please check in with your academic staff. Academic staff across the university are excellent at preparing their students for exams. They want their students to do well. But if you feel that you're missing anything, or you're not quite sure about the type of exam that you're going to undertake, then do ask your academic staff. Okay, they're there for questions and clarification and things like that. So as much as you can, find out what to expect. And if you've got, for example, a set number of questions, and you've got, I don't know, just for an example, I'm thinking of the student who's doing an on-campus exam might have 2 hours, and you think, right, I've got 6 questions and I need to pick 3 and I've got 2 hours. It's very easy to think, right, I've got 2 hours, divide by 3, I'll spend that amount of time on each question. But what you have to do as well is try to carve in some buffer time. You need time to read, even if it's a quick skim, the entire paper. Okay, so particularly if there's a choice of questions, you need to sort of go through the whole paper before you can make that informed choice about which questions are best for you. You need to sort of think about, if you can think about the marks allocation, how that's divided. Obviously you don't want to spend 40 minutes on a question if it's only going to get you 4 marks. You might want to spend your 40 minutes on the question that's going to give you 30 marks, for example. So think about how you divide up your time. Have a bit of time at the beginning to sort of find your calm, read through the paper, maybe do I know lots of different students might be listening to this, but it might be helpful for you to do a bit of what we call a mind dump, which is where, particularly if you're worried, I'm going to forget this, or there's a particular process or particular formula I have to remember, you might want to quickly write that down in your booklet, okay, or quickly write that down in your online booklet. You can do that. Scrap paper isn't allowed or anything, but you can do that in your booklet. And if you don't want it to count towards marks, it's not part of your answer, then you can cross that out as well. So things like that at the beginning. Then you start with your questions, but always have at the end, in terms of time management, some time to read through your questions as well, because you'd be amazed at how many additional marks students can pick up just by having a quick read through. So it might be that you pick up on little errors that you've made. You might think, oh my goodness, there's a part of the question there that I didn't answer, so you add that in, for example. So actually managing the exam on the day isn't just about how much of your knowledge and understanding in terms of the topic. There is sort of an exam technique, and that's a skill as well. And the more we find out about how to manage that, and the more we practice that, which again is another reason for practicing past papers and past questions as much as you can, the better hopefully we're going to perform on the day.
Great, Mel. Thanks so much for that. There was a lot in that to take away. So thank you.
Okay.
I think we'd like to move over to Nikki now, who's one of our clinical lead counsellors. So Nikki, we know this can be a tough time of year for lots of students, quite challenging in the lead up to exams. And we wondered if you can tell us more about the counselling service and who students can speak to if they're struggling emotionally.
Definitely. Napier offers a range of different supports for coping strategies, advice for students experiencing stress, anxiety, mental health issues, or due to personal circumstances or academic pressures. So we generally advise students to, at first point, look through the drop-in. We have a drop-in provision, and students can also make assessment appointment via My Future. So both of those routes can get you an initial contact with student wellbeing, counselling and mental wellbeing, to get an overview of what's going on, because sometimes we're not exactly sure what's going on or what the issue is, and that's a great place to start, really. So I definitely recommend students, doesn't matter how big or small the issue is, get in contact with us, and we're here to help. At Napier, we've got like a range, as I said, of different services. So we offer counselling, we offer CBT, and we offer mental health advice. The counsellors and the CBT, it's brief support. So it's 5 sessions. You get approximately 50 minutes, exactly 50 minutes a week to sit with the counsellor or the therapist, and that can be face-to-face, it can be online or telephone. The main difference between the CBT and the counsellors, that a CBT therapist is more focused on the challenging thoughts that may arise, patterns and behaviours, and the mental health advisors, they are able to offer sort of practical strategies as well, and emotional support. And the great thing about the mental health advisors is they can work through the whole trimester, and sometimes even longer than that. So that's something, if you feel you've got some complex things going on, you can have that continued support. So as I said, the main sort of face-to-face, whether that's in campus, in person on campus, or online, is counselling and CBT. And then we also have the drop-in provision as well, which I can maybe speak a little bit about later on.
Brilliant, thanks, Nikki. Obviously, that's a great range of support we have at Napier for those kind of things. And probably just worth pointing out, if anybody is after that, they can always contact the team at counselling@napier.ac.uk. I guess there's another question as well, which is, there's probably quite a lot of people in the run-up to exams who are feeling quite a lot of stress, but maybe don't feel that that kind of approaching counselling is the way to go with that. And I was just wondering if there are any kind of advice or stuff for them.
Yeah, definitely. So the other thing which we have is we have a lot of online support as well. I mean, we're doing a Facebook Live, and some people feel more comfortable accessing things in their own time, in their own space. So we have two platforms which are accessible to Napier students. The first is called Together All, and on Together All you can access assessments, journaling. They've got forums on there. Really useful, free confidential service that all students just register with their student email, and they've got access to that platform. The other thing we have is SilverCloud, and SilverCloud is more CBT in approach. You can work through modules, so it might be things like stress, anxiety. There's a great one on sleep as well, so improving your sleep, and you work through the modules at your own pace in your own time. The other thing that I'd recommend is mindfulness. Obviously, that can mean a range of things. It doesn't mean necessarily sitting in the lotus position. Mindfulness can be things like making podcasts with music or listening to podcasts. It can be taking up some activities through exercise. We've got lots of different societies through Engage and things which you could tap into, and focusing on breathing as well. I think in terms of trying to relax and be calm, breath is going to be a key aspect of that. So those are perhaps the two main things that I would say. Trying to still the mind and be present, and also the breathing are going to really help, particularly when dealing with stress around exams. But those two online platforms are accessible all year round as well, and are free for all students.
That's absolutely fantastic. I think kind of off the back of some of this, there is kind of that question as well of, what do students do if they don't feel they are, in a place where they can currently undertake their assessments. So we kind of just wanted to very quickly bring up the Fit to Sit process at the university. Now, for those who might not be aware, Fit to Sit is basically the university's way of saying, that when you turn up for an exam, when you turn up for an assessment, you are essentially saying to us that you are well and able to undertake that assessment at that time. Now, if you are approaching an assessment and don't feel that, there are certain things that you can do. Also, it is sometimes the case that you might kind of go to an assessment, sit it, and then realise very shortly afterwards that maybe that wasn't a good idea because you aren't in a fit and able place to do that, whether that's because you've, sustained an injury, you're in a lot of pain, you're unwell, you're going through a mental health crisis. There are any number of things. So there are a few things that we can kind of look at as a university which might be able to support you. The first of those is extensions. So if we're talking about particular assessments where you have a set deadline, you can now request a 5-day extension before the due date, and you can request that without any evidence. In exceptional circumstances, you can ask for up to 10 days, but that would require some evidence, and you would need to fill in our RE1 form available on My Napier. Now, a lot of this stuff is actually available on the My Napier site. We do have a URL that we can pop up as well to show you where all that exists, and we'll pop that in the comments as well for you. If the extension isn't right, if you know that you've got an assessment coming up, but particularly for exams, we can also in some cases offer deferrals. So deferrals, that would usually be where we say you aren't in a good place to sit this at the moment, but we would like to retake this assessment at the next available opportunity, which in many cases might be the following summer. Again, you can apply for a deferral, but you should ideally do that in advance of when that assessment happens. If that's not possible, you are able to request it up to 5 days after. And again, that also applies if you were to sit the assessment and then realise that actually you weren't fit to do so at the time. That is when you can, then you've got that 5 working days to make that request as well. It is also possible if you, say, had an incident that stopped you taking part in your assessment. So, you're in an accident, you're in hospital, you couldn't engage, you couldn't let us know what was going on. There is also a process for that called exceptional extenuating circumstances. So basically that just means there are circumstances outside of your control which meant you couldn't do that. And that has a slightly longer time to apply for that, which is right up until, and I'm going to read this so I get it absolutely right, Application must be submitted no later than 5 working days after the end of the last week of examinations during the trimester in which the assessment was due. So if you were to miss an exam in this exam diet, you'd have until 5 working days after the end of the last week of exams to apply for that. So that's quite a lot to kind of take on board. As I say, that is available on the My Napier website. And we would really kind of encourage you, if you're not feeling 100%, to have a look at that and figure out what those options are. We did talk a little bit there about evidence for these things, and in some cases that is evidence that we as wellbeing and inclusion practitioners can provide. Nikki, would you be able to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I've just seen in the chat there, we're talking about, what sort of things when you're trying to still the mind. Is that kind of what we're looking for?
Well, I'm more kind of thinking in this case, and we will come to that in a second. I'm more just kind of thinking that if somebody's kind of applying for an extension or a deferral.
Okay. Yeah. So we've got the drop-ins. That's probably the best access point we have for that. So we've got drop-ins, which are the confidential space. You get 20 minutes, and you can book that for at counselling@napier.ac.uk, and you can do those either online, face to face, or by phone. And so we'd come and we'd just find out what's been going on for you, be able to get an overview of that situation, and then provide you with that letter of support. So we encourage people to come along to that. As I said, it's only 20 minutes. It's a confidential space, and then we would provide that. Whoever's the assessor there would send out a letter via email, and then you could send that along with your extenuating circumstances. So that would be the main route to get a letter of support.
That's brilliant, thank you. Following on from that, I can see that we've actually had a question in from the comments, which I think you were just referring to, Nikki.
I was indeed.
Yeah,
Getting
and
distracted.
I think that'd be no, easily done. I'm very easily distracted myself. We've had a question from Facebook, basically about how to deal with kind of having a mind that's always active, and how to really focus, which I think hopefully you'll be able to speak to.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things which we do offer is we do have some mindfulness sessions that one of our counsellors offers regularly through the term. And essentially what we try and encourage there is to break things down into smaller chunks and also being present. So a lot of the time when we get distracted or our mind's going all over the place, it's because we're moving from to the future or from the past, and a lot of the mindfulness is about bringing that thought and that mind into this present moment. So as I said, the sessions that we offer online and also on campus now help you to understand that process in a little bit more depth and help you to learn some of those techniques. So that can also be done via sort of self-help. There's quite a few mindfulness apps, and we also have shelf help through the library at Napier. So there'll be some tutorials and some basic introductions to mindfulness, but that would definitely be a key route to try and still the mind and to be able to switch off. The other thing I would say as well, which I think Mel touched upon as well, is to have a little bit of structure and organization. So having a schedule can also give you set times to have time off and set times to have fun as well as work hard and have time to revise. So often we think more is better. We think the more I do, the better I'm going to be able to, achieve in that exam or that assessment, when actually it's the efficiency that's key. So that might be something which you need to explore as well. Am I creating enough time to slow down, to rest, to have some enjoyment so that I can be focused when I need to be focused?
That's brilliant. Thank you, Nikki. That's absolutely fantastic. I'm just looking at the time now and seeing that we are almost bang on our half hour. So I guess at this point, I would just really, really like to thank Nikki and Mel, for joining us today. Really appreciate it. I think you've given us a lot to think about and some really fantastic advice for the students. So thank you so much for that. Again, we also have just kind of in our backstage area, Phil from our marketing team, who's done an incredible job for us today. So big thank you to Phil. Phil, if we could ask you as well, if you could just again share those links that we've discussed about the different services, we'd really appreciate that. Again, thanks to everybody who's viewing this today. We hope you found it useful. Do please please do let us know what you found useful, what you maybe haven't found useful or would like to know more about. Pop that in the comments under this, and if you're watching this back at another time, you can still use the comments to ask questions, and we'll try and get back to you when we can. Otherwise, just once again, thanks for everybody. Caroline, anything you wanted to add before we
I don't think so, Tom. Just please, check us out on My Napier, everybody. All our information is there. Everything we've spoken about today, all the service access information is on My Napier. So please check there, and please get in touch. If you need any support at all, please get in touch with us. That's what we're here for. Fantastic. And good luck with your exams.
Yep.
Very importantly.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think that's the last thing to say. So thank you very much, everybody. We'll call that a day there. And from all of us, just lots of good luck with your exams. And remember, the preparation will make the luck, turn up. So good luck to everybody.